So I'm sure by now you're familiar with the term expatriate. Generally, this is the technical and the most appropriate term referred to an individual who undertakes a foreign assignment, a foreign job, an individual who leaves his home country and works in a foreign country temporarily and purely for work related reason. But expatriate is also a term which is referred in the context of an individual who gives up his citizenship in his own home country, country of birth and citizenship, to become a citizen of another country. So these are the two situations in which we use the term expatriate. But in the context of IHRM, International Human Resource Management, when we say expatriate, generally we are referring it to the first situation. So the journey of expatriate starts with so-called international adjustment. So there is something called as international adjustment cycle, in which you have to understand how expatriate starts his journey from his home country, going all the way to the foreign country, getting settled there, getting adjusted to his job, foreign culture. So this entire cycle, this entire process is called international adjustment cycle. So in today's class, we will study this international adjustment cycle to begin with. So the first phase or the first stage of international adjustment cycle is obviously preparation for taking up foreign assignment. But even before this preparation could start, obviously the expatriate would start hunting for foreign jobs from his home country. So he makes up his mind that he has to work in a foreign country, and this decision to work in foreign country can be driven by various factors. And by and large, in case of almost all the expatriates, the reason, the motive is purely monetary. The major reason is to earn better in the foreign country. So that's one of the reasons why most of the people leave their home country and go and work in the foreign country. I mean, there are many other reasons also, but this is the primary factor. The primary factor is monetary aspects. So you want to earn more, you want to make more money, and you want to grow in terms of financial wealth, financial well-being. So therefore, international assignment is considered by the individual. So obviously, the application, once it is approved, the expatriate, once he receives work visa in the foreign country, he can start preparing for his departure. So that's how it works. But it's a process which would have taken a very long time, or in some case a very short time also. Depends on which country, what is the nature of the job. A lot of factors influence the duration of getting a job in the foreign country. But once the confirmation is received by the expatriate confirming that he is being shortlisted, selected, and very soon he would be receiving a work permit to work in the designated country. That is when the preparation starts. Now, this preparation is a series of, I would rather say, mixed emotions, because here in this phase of preparation, there is obviously a sense of satisfaction, a sense of happiness, and the parents of the expatriate, the family members, are also quite excited. They are also very happy because the expatriate is being shortlisted and he would be traveling to foreign country, and definitely the family members wouldn't keep quiet. They would communicate this to their friends, relatives, neighbors. So the entire neighborhood is also aware that so and so person from so and so house is traveling abroad. So a lot of things are going on in the process of preparation. Expatriate himself is quite excited because something which he was looking for has now become a reality, and he is also informing his friends, his relatives about his foreign assignment. So there is definitely a feeling of happiness. At the same time, there is some sort of anxiety also, because you know sometimes there is a sense of nervousness because you don't know what will happen in the foreign country, how the job will be, how the managers would be, how the culture would be, how the weather conditions would be, how the food will be, how the people will be. So all these questions also go in the background. And this is what makes a person quite anxious, because he is moving into an unknown territory where everything will be new. So he has to start his entire journey from the scratch, from the very beginning, right? So that also creates a kind of mixed emotions, right? Mixed emotions also comes from the fact that the expatriate, even though he's happy that he has got a foreign job, but somewhere he's also a little sad because he has to now leave his family and he has to go and work all alone in the foreign country. And in some cases, it is allowed for the expatriate to take family members also, especially spouse and children. So it all depends on the country and on the assignment. But nonetheless, even though if expatriate is taking his wife or spouse, rather use the word spouse or children, still there is a sense of sadness because he's leaving his or she's leaving his family, friends. So there is definitely a mix of emotions which the expatriate undergoes. And all the family members are also preparing for expatriates departure, right? So given the fact in the Indian context, we do believe in so many rituals, right? So a lot of prayers are happening for the expatriate, good wishes, everybody are geared up to drop the expatriate to the airport, right, to say goodbyes. All sorts of things happens. Now once the departure happens from the home country, obviously the expatriate would land in the host country where he is uh, designated to work. And after landing there, it's quite an exciting feeling, obviously, because he has ventured into a new country. uh, so definitely there will be a feeling of excitement given the fact that it's quite a new place where the expatriate has not been there. So that itself create a kind of an excitement. Uh, a lot of things happens in the initial phase. The expatriate, after landing there, for him everything is new. So there is a curiosity also to understand how the work would be, how the colleagues would be, right? How the work culture would be in the company. So a lot of things the expatriate now wants to discover, right? So he starts working in a foreign country, and after he starts working, probably after spending few weeks there, uh, he gets that feeling of excitement. He's quite fascinated to meet new people, learn new culture, and at the same time, it is a general tendency which all human beings have, that we always tend to compare things, right? So whenever we are taking up an activity or doing something, or taking up, in case we have taken up a task, we always have this tendency to compare. Forget about going to foreign country. Even if you're going to a new city in India, you always tend to compare. No, this is how it is in our city. This is how it is in our place. So you immediately want to do a comparison. So same sort of comparison also happen here. So the expatriate is trying to compare between different culture. Okay, this is how it is in India. Okay, but this is how it is here in the foreign country. And the expatriate is also trying to figure out, okay, these are some of the similarities, because he's happy to learn more also on the similarity, not just on the differences. So this is what happens in the so-called honeymoon phase. So this phase has been termed as honeymoon because there is a sense of excitement and fascination to learn about his new job, to learn about the culture of the new country where he is, obviously where he would be working as per the contract. So that's what happens in these first two phases. But the third phase is something in which the problems do creep in, and this is called the cultural shock, which is quite evident. A lot of people go through this. Even for that matter, people who come from villages for the city for the first time, even they go through this sense of cultural shock, because forget about different countries. There is a big cultural difference between the way people live in cities and the way people live in villages, right? So probably a villager, right, first time who has ventured into a city like Bangalore, he would get a big shock probably when he discovers that uh, here in Bangalore, even women drink, even women smoke, women also are driving car. So there might be a kind of a shock, and definitely it is a cultural shock because this is something which does not happen in the rural India. right? So for him, it is something which is very new. He has witnessed something new which he has never seen, right? So this is how people react when they see something which generally they don't see, or they have not come across. So this is quite not in just in the context of international travel. Whenever you witness something which is quite unusual, you will bound to react and express shock. So this is what happens in case of expat also. He is confronting a new culture there in the foreign country. So obviously he will go through that cultural shock. And this culture, it's not just about the culture, it's also about the behavior of people in the foreign country, and their value system in the foreign country obviously is totally different from our value system in India. So these things also might have some sort of an impact on the mindset of the expatriate, right? So in case if you come across people who are very rude to him, maybe it is at his workplace, or maybe in the neighborhood, or during the process of some sort of a transaction, you would have come across people who are very rude and who don't like expatriates, because usually it happens in the foreign countries. They don't like people who come to their country and work because they perceive expatriates as threat, because ultimately we are doing somebody's job there, right? The same job could have been done by a localite, but it's being done by somebody else for a simple reason that we are working there for a lesser salary than what the company would have paid to a localite. So definitely the locals are not happy with expats for a simple reason that they believe that somehow we are hijacking their jobs. So they might definitely be very rude. They might be discriminatory in nature also. That is also happens. So you might have to go through racial abuse, right? You may probably witness some sort of abuse also. So that is what creates this shock, right? You might not be accepted by your peers, by your colleagues, by virtue of you being somebody who's not a part of their culture, not a part of their country, community. So various reasons are there as to why you're undergoing cultural shock. So all this might create a negative impact on the mindset, and you might end up getting a feeling that whether you did a right thing by leaving your home country and going and working in a foreign country. Was the decision correct? Because this is the stage which is quite critical. If the expatriate fails in this stage, the entire international assignment fails, he has to come back to his home country. So that's the kind of implications it can have in case if the expatriate is not able to accommodate this so-called cultural shock. But in case if the expatriate is mentally strong and if he's able to cope up with this cultural shock, then he will venture into the next stage called adjustment. So adjustment is a process in which you're trying to accommodate the changes which you feel that it is not it is actually unacceptable to you, but still you are changing your frame of mind, you're changing your value system and your ethical code of conduct. You're making necessary changes here just to ensure that you just want to get inclined with the value system of the host country, with their culture, right? So that's how it works. So you try to learn their social and cultural norms. You're trying to learn their culture. You're trying to learn their language. You're trying to learn their lifestyle. So somehow you want to now make yourself in a position where you're okay with that culture, right? So somehow you're fine in working with foreigners. So somehow you're okay with whatever has happened there. So you're trying to accommodate yourself. So this is what happens in the uh, adjustment phase, right? Which is an important step towards your entire success in the foreign assignment. And the last stage is something which is quite interesting. This is called acceptance and integration. So here in this stage, you become more like a localite. So you have adjusted yourself so well that you know the culture, you know the value system of the foreign country as good as a localite does, right? So you have already integrated yourself into foreign culture. So you're more inclined there, and you've learned a lot of cultural aspects right? Now you are very confident of moving across the city, right? Different places in the same country because you're very confident because you've got well aware and well versed with the foreign culture. In fact, now you have dual identity, right? You're Indian also, but you're also a citizen of that country. That's how you are perceiving it as, because you are now in a position to gel well with the people, right? You have learned their accent, you have learned their culture, you have learned their way of living, you are well acquainted with their lifestyle, right? So you know what makes them angry, so you can easily handle people. So you have completely transformed yourself. Now you have a dual identity, right? You can act as a citizen of their country also mentally, and yes, of course, you are also an Indian. So some sort of a dual identity is what you have developed. So this is what we call as stages of international adjustment. So it's a process of how an expatriate transforms, right? Gets himself adjusted to foreign culture and starts working there. So this is what international adjustment cycle is all about. Now, another important component of attracting and managing expatriates in foreign countries is, of course, compensation, which is what I mentioned is the very own basis of going and working in a foreign country. Most of the people go there because they don't get the salary what they get in the foreign country, in their home country. Uh, so therefore, salary is the important source of motivation to go and work abroad. And therefore, as a HR manager of international companies, if you want to attract expatriates, if you want to persuade them, if you want the best talent to work for your company, you need to work on your compensation strategy. So your compensation strategy should focus on these five dimensions. One, it should be attractive and it should generate a lot of interest in the expatriate to take a foreign assignment. And you should ensure that you keep your expatriates at sufficient financial level. It should not so happen that the expatriate, after he starts working in the foreign country, because he has to take care of his expenses and his family expenses, if family members are allowed to travel with him. So it should not so happen that after spending money for his basic requirement in the foreign country, he's not able to save anything. So that also can lead to a lot of stress and the foreign assignment might fail. So you should design the package in such a way that expatriate at the end of the day ends up saving a lot of money, because that's what he wants. He wants to make money, he wants to create wealth by working in the foreign country. And therefore HR should consider other benefits also apart from monetary compensation. So probably in case if employees, families were with the expatriate, so consider giving him accommodation to stay, consider taking care of his children's education. So either this can be done in the form of monetary benefits or non-monetary benefits, something which you have to decide in terms of the components of the remuneration package. Facilitate movement of expatriates between subsidiaries. This is purely in the context of multinational companies. So this will also empower the employees. If you're deployed in different countries, it gives you a better exposure and you also feel loyal as an employee, that company has trusted you and company has put its faith on your skills and talent, and it is deploying you in different countries wherever it is necessary. And you're also happy because you're getting to learn different perspectives from different countries. So if possible, this should also be done. Consistent and reasonable relationship between pay levels. So depending on the severity of the role, depending on the job profile, depending on the performance, the pay levels needs to be modified. It should not be consistent and same. So pay levels should change. The pay levels should accommodate the inflation, employees' performance, employees' roles and responsibilities should be incorporated in the pay level, and cost effective from the perspective of the company. So it's not just that you're pouring out all the money of the company on the compensation. For the company also, it should be cost effective. So company should also benefit, employees should also benefit. So it should be a win-win situation for both. Now, what are the components which you will include as a part of expatriate salary? Generally, the components includes the base salary, then comes all the other benefits. And these benefits, when we say benefits, purely they are in terms of non-monetary, sometimes also referred to as perquisites. So what are the non-monetary benefits you're giving to the expatriate? Are you giving him the housing facility to him and his family members? What about the educational facility to expatriates children? What about the healthcare benefits? So usually all these are covered in the non-monetary benefits, because expatriate, as I mentioned, should not end up spending a lot of money for the living. So therefore, all this should be taken care by the company. The company should provide him free insurance, health insurance, so that if in case any kind of health issue arises, it has to be taken care by the insurance, right? So these benefits are equally important as monetary benefits. Allowances are basically monetary benefits given in addition to salary. So do you have a concept wherein you are giving additional allowances for any kind of additional or basically any work related assignment what the employee does? Because most of the allowances are given to employees to perform certain duties, right? So these duties, for example, travel allowance, so that the employee can travel to take up the job assigned to him. So it has to be taken care. So are you giving him travel allowance? Right? So allowances might be work related. Sometimes it might not be work related, but they definitely help the employees in doing their job. Incentives just to boost the employee morale and to motivate him to give his best. And of course, taxes is something which cannot be overlooked, because as I mentioned, the focus of expatriate is to create wealth, and if it happens only if there is ample amount of savings. But in case if the savings are getting drained by high taxation, then no expatriate will be willing to take up foreign assignment. So what HRs have to do is focus on two things. They should work either on tax equalization. So tax equalization basically means designing a salary package in such a way that the expatriate will end up paying tax which is similar to what is applicable in his home country. So that is what tax equalization means. Now, tax protection means basically giving him tax incentives so that he don't end up paying high amount of taxes. So either way, you have to help the expatriate in minimizing his tax liability. Otherwise, he will not be able to save. And if he's not able to save, definitely he's not creating any wealth for him in the future, and he will not take up foreign assignment. So these are some of the points which the HRs have to focus on when it comes to compensation management. Now, what are the factors influencing compensation? So how the compensation gets decided, it all depends on the goal orientation. When we say goal orientation, it means it depends on the company's vision, mission, right? So what is the company's policy when it comes to compensation? Does the company have sufficient budget? What the top management believe when it comes to pay? So it all depends on the objectives. If the objective of the company does not emphasizes on a good pay policy, then obviously as a HR you can't do anything, because you can't change the policy which has already been decided by the executive management. So that therefore the starting point of any compensation is the objective of the company. Then financial resources. If the company does not have financial resources, then how will you pay? So therefore, financial capacity also an important factor. Competitive strategy. Sometimes the salary packages are highly influenced by the market. So what the competitors are paying, you also want to pay either better than them or as on par with them. Otherwise, employees will keep jumping from one company to another company wherever the salary is good. Organization culture is also an important factor. So organization culture refers to a set of norms which are followed within the organization. So they are different from the policy. Policy is different and organizational culture is different. So what kind of organizational culture have you created? Do you follow an organizational culture where employee performance and progress is linked to his salary? If so, then you have to keep paying him higher salary depending on his performance. But if you follow an organizational culture wherein you have not linked employees' performance and progress with the salary, but rather you have linked it with some other employee empowerment measures, then maybe the monetary aspect might not play an important role. For example, if an employee performs well, then he is given some sort of a higher designation, but not the pay. So that is also depends on what kind of organizational culture you have created, right? Internal workforce composition. How many experienced employees you have, how many freshers do you have? It all depends. In case if you're hiring experienced staff, a lot of expert staff, then you have to shell out a lot of money on them. But freshers, yes, the salaries are relatively lower. Labor relations is also an important factor. So if you want to maintain cordial relation, then you have to accept the demands of the labor unions, of the employees, and keep them compensated in a level wherein they are quite satisfied and happy and don't go for any kind of lockouts and strikes. So that's also a factor. The role of subsidiary. So sometimes you can leave it to the subsidiary to decide on what kind of package, what kind of salary structure to offer. But in case if you have not empowered your subsidiary in the foreign country, then you have to probably take a decision. Sometimes subsidiaries are given complete freedom. They work as an independent unit. But sometimes subsidiaries also have to take permission and wait for approvals for any kind of compensation policy from their parent company. So these are the internal factors. Now, external factors includes parent nationality. So which country you belong to. So depending on that country's culture, policy, laws and regulations, you may have to fix the salary. Labor market. So whether there is availability of the required skill in the labor market or not. In case the required skill is very confined or limited, then you may have to end up paying higher salaries. But if the labor market is already has sufficient supply of the kind of talent what you're looking for, then when demand exceeds supply, you can keep the salaries low. So that is also something which is important. And you have to also look into the local culture. You have to see how the local norms are when it comes to paying of salary, because you don't have to follow the standards of what you're following in your parent country. You have to go by what is the culture that exists locally in the host country, right? And most importantly, you have to accommodate the provisions and laws enforced by the governments. So you have to adhere to the government norms also when it comes to payment of salary and other benefits. It also depends on the industry type, because each industry has its own compensation structure. So you cannot say that education industry and corporate sector they pay same salary. Education industry has a different salary structure. Corporates have a different salary structure. So depending on the industry type, and in within industry also there are different salary structure. Somebody who's working in airline industry has a different package from somebody who works as a software engineer in the ITES industry. So therefore, industry culture or industry type also plays a significant role in deciding the salary structure. But despite of doing all this, despite of uh, having a good recruitment policy, despite of having good selection practices in place, despite of giving the best orientation, despite of imparting the best training, including cross-cultural training, despite of giving a very good compensation, there are reasons that expatriate might not work according to their tenure, and sometimes they might just complete their tenure and leave the foreign country. So there are reasons why expatriates might not continue to work and might leave the foreign assignment. So we have to figure out what are the reasons why expat failure happens. So there are a host of reasons. First is being a more of a sociological factor, family stress. So family stress can be on account of various reasons. So back home, expatriates family might be going through some sort of an issue there. Various personal issues do exist. So because of these personal issues in the family, expatriate is unable to focus on his job, and it is forcing him to, give away his foreign assignment and go back to the home country. So various personal family reasons can be there. It can be some sort of a fight within the family for some property, or it can be marriage related reasons, or it can be the health of the family members. You can, prepare a list of various personal family reasons which can create some sort of a stress on the expatriate. Another reason is pertaining to the spouse. So spouse is not able to adjust, because when we say spouse is not able to adjust, either it can be back at the home country, or it can be in the host country where the expatriate is working. Expatriate might take his family with him. Some companies do have that policy. But even though expatriate is okay with the kind of changes what he has encountered in the foreign nation, but expatriate's spouse is unable to accommodate these changes. Expatriate spouse is finding it extremely difficult to adjust to the foreign culture. It sometimes it's not just language. There are so many other things, right? It can be food habits, it can be the weather conditions. Imagine if people like us who are from a tropical weather, a tropical we here in India have this tropical climate, right, wherein it's extremely hot during the summers, and it rains so much during the other part of the year. So we are more acquainted to the tropical climate. And imagine if people like us, if we are asked to go and work in those countries which are very near towards the North Pole, where you have extreme cold conditions, definitely we might think it will be quite exciting. But when you go and work in those extreme conditions, when you go and stay in those extreme conditions, then you might figure out that, oh God, it's so difficult to work in those conditions. So it's not just the cultural point of view. The spouse is not able to adjust it. Sometimes it can be related to climatic conditions also. So these are the various reasons. Or The spouse is not able to adjust back home in the absence of his or her partner, because of which a lot of emotional issues are creeping up. So that can also be a reason, right? So these are the personal reasons of the expatriate. But sometimes the reason can be from the perspective of the company, because company has ended up selecting an expatriate, a candidate who's unfit, right? At the selection, during the selection process, things have gone wrong. So you have ended up selecting a wrong candidate who's not able to work in the foreign conditions. So sometimes we have to scrutinize where things have gone in the recruitment, selection, training, right? It's not always the expatriate. Sometimes the company's officials, the HRs, would have not screened the candidate properly, would not have ratified his profile, and would have ended up making a wrong selection. So that can also be a reason. Sometimes expatriate can be mentally strong when it comes to handling family stress, right? He may be strong enough to convince spouse, uh, but unfortunately, expatriate himself might not be fit enough. Expatriate himself might not be fit enough to get acquainted with the foreign culture, because the first two factors is coming not within, right? It's not pertaining to the expatriate. It is pertaining to his spouse and family members. But when we talk about fourth factor, this is an inherent factor pertaining to the expatriate himself. He himself is not able to accommodate the cultural changes. So he's finding it extremely difficult. He's not able to tolerate, right? He's not having the kind of patience and tolerance required. And therefore, he feels it's out of his jurisdiction to accommodate the cultural differences and work in a foreign country, and therefore he leaves. Then comes responsibility overload. When the expatriate is overburdened, given too much of work. I mean, this, I would say, is a common factor, not just pertaining to international jobs. It can happen to anybody, anywhere, right? Even in when we work for companies here, at times, you're given too many responsibilities and roles, and that is where you feel that the kind of work which is being dumped on you, it is not justified, right? Morally, it's not justified. And moreover, the kind of work what you're doing, it's not being justified by the right salary. So when you feel that you're being overburdened and when you feel it's unfair, definitely you will not able to work. And this can also be a reason. Sometimes it is also the kind of maturity level which you have to develop. If you are not in a position to handle difficult situations, if you're too sensitive, what will happen? This will backfire, and the kind of maturity which is required, if you don't exhibit that in difficult situations, then you will break down and you will leave the foreign country and the foreign job. So at times it is how emotionally strong you are, how well you have trained yourself, and how well can you control your emotions in difficult situations, in conflicting situation, totally determines the success of your foreign assignment. Lack of emotional maturity can definitely create issues. Even for small, silly reasons, you will get mentally stressed. You will not have that peace of mind because you are too sensitive for even smaller and silly things. And if that is the kind of mentality you have, then definitely you will not be able to survive. And therefore, you can't work there. A physical breakdown happens because of the physical inability. Because all these factors, what we have discussed by and large, they are related to your mindset, but sometimes physical background, you might not be having the required physical strength to work. So because of your inability to physically do the job can also lead to a failure. So these are the list of reasons as to why expatriates fail. HRs also need to work upon on these reasons and come up with uh, corrective measures. So some of the corrective actions that can be initiated by HRs is to improve their selection procedure. And that's one of the reason why most of the HRs and most of the companies have multiple rounds. These multiple rounds during the interview process is aimed at understanding the candidate well, right? So as I told you, Each round has a specific reason behind it. So when you have multiple rounds, different selection test procedures, you can avoid selecting a wrong candidate during the interview process, right? And from the perspective of HR, what companies should do is it should focus on these elements: self orientation, others orientation, and cultural toughness. So at the time of selection, these are the things what the HRs should exclusively look into the candidate whom they are selecting. A candidate who is self-driven, who has passion, who has that urge, that desire to work and earn in the foreign country. So it should not be from an external force, but it should rather be from within. So that's important. And you have to also see if he has any kind of other external pressure on him, because sometimes external pressure also works very well. Imagine if I am interviewing a candidate and he says that he is unmarried and his father has a business, the family is staying in the own house. All these reasons are actually prompting me not to select the candidate. So for a simple reason that the candidate is well settled, right? Does not have any responsibility on his shoulders from the very fact that he's unmarried. Second, his father is a businessman, right? They already have own house. So what is the financial stimulus here, right? So there is no persuasion. So obviously there is no external force which is keeping him pressurized to work. But in case if a candidate has a family, right, he does not have his own house, he has a lot of responsibility on his shoulders, then obviously there is an eccentric pressure. He is more oriented towards working in the foreign country because of all that external other reasons what is there on his shoulders. Cultural toughness, so how well you can get acquainted to new cultures. So all these things are extremely important. Learning the local language will definitely help in avoiding those cultural inflexibility and shocks, which is important. Managing family issues, so maybe you should have a counselor, or HR can also help the employees in this aspect through proper counseling and other uh, strategies. Intercultural training, CCT, something which we have already discussed. Liberal performance appraisal. This is a very good strategy. This is just to avoid that responsibility overload and to stop burdening the employee mentally. So when your performance appraisal is liberal, you feel that yes, even I can perform in this foreign work culture, work environment. So you get that satisfaction that yes, you're doing well. But if you keep the performance appraisal standards too high, this can dent the motivation level. So keep it liberal as possible. Repatriation program. So repatriation program is sending back the foreign employee once he has completed his international assignment. So in case at the time of repatriation, you are offering incentives, which means let's say you have selected a foreign candidate for a 10 years contract. And as per the contract, at the time of completion of 10 years, the employee gets additional monetary benefits. If that's the case, the employee will get glued themselves in the foreign country by keeping the end in mind. He knows that if he completes 10 years, he will get somewhere around 10 lakhs rupees extra as bonus. So that will keep him, glued in the foreign country. So that repatriation program is also important. Now, what is repatriation? Repatriation is a process of returning back from an international assignment to home country after completing the assignment, or it might be also because of some other issue. So it's a process of concluding your foreign assignment. So just like your international adjustment, you also have a repatriation process. So repatriation process is a process of going back home. And after going back home, you should also get adjusted back to your home country's culture, because all this while you have lived a life of a foreigner, and by and large you have actually become a foreigner. Imagine if you work for 25 years in a foreign country, you become more like a foreign citizen. And after coming back to India, you will have difficulty in getting adjusted to your own local culture, right? So the process of again getting back to normal, getting adjusted to your local culture is what the repatriation process is all about. Okay, so with this we will conclude our today's session.